Hello and welcome, I'm Dante from Low Manor and we just had another Anthem livestream featuring Mike Gamble, Ben Irving and John Warner. This time we've got a look at an all-new Stronghold from the viewpoint of the Interceptor, which for many will be the main focal point, but we did get to see a full squad in action, mostly working together. If you're an Interceptor fan, today was your day. We got to see about 30 minutes of gameplay with a team kitted to support them, but we also got a lot more information along the way, as well as a sneaky Q&A at the end. Starting off with the Stronghold itself, I'll then move on to the Javelin info and end with the Q&A. This was an all-new dungeon called Temple of the Scar, which they were running at level 20. As far as we know right now, the cap is 30, and might confirm this was about 3/4 of the way through into the leveling process of the game, meaning this is likely at least 50% of the way through the main story, though very little about the story was shown. It's also possible, and personally I think rather likely, that the Stronghold is a side point to the main plot. Something I noticed early on that I thought was interesting is that Owen was not the Cypher on this mission, but instead we had the much more experienced Faye. Take what you will from this and whether it has any impact on the story itself, but it's an interesting observation at the least. The dungeon itself, as the name suggests, was a Scar Stronghold, specifically a temple, which ties into the lore we have on them so far, that they worship the Shapers in some way, which we can see indicated by this painting right at the very start. It's all speculation of course, but I think that the top is a reflection of the relics or possibly even the vessels from the Shapers, with rays coming down to the scars, symbolising that the Shapers gave them life, and that's why they worship them as gods, or that they believe the Shapers will bestow powers onto them in return for their worship. With this kind of symbolism, it's common for there to be a nugget of truth at the centre, with the ritualistic part being embellished over time. It's likely that the Shapers did create them, either on purpose or as an accident, or that they brought them here and that the Scars have found ways to use relics to empower them, perhaps alluding to Scar units we have yet to see. It's not out of the realms of possibility that some of them, perhaps leaders, have access to magic, in the same way to ciphers that communicate with us and even Anthem itself. Before we jump into the conspiracy rabbit hole, let's move on with the mission at hand. The Stronghold, or the progression through it, is made up of challenges and tasks that need to be overcome. Much like a classic dungeon crawl in D&D, these tasks create the sub-objectives as they progress through. So far we got to see specific target destruction, such as the turret sections, shutting down alarms, locating a person or object, overcoming gates by collecting resources to power them or destroy them, and a mini-boss in the form of the heavies. These give us some indication as to how they will operate, a little bit different to say a dungeon in World of Warcraft, as not every obstacle is a boss to be defeated. Rather, you progress in a narrative fashion, through obstacles, all of which fit into the classic mission styles. Collect something, deliver something, defeat something, or defend something. I'm sure there'll be variations of these, maybe even some puzzles, but it gives a good indication of what kind of gameplay to expect from a Stronghold. Honestly, I'm glad it's a little bit more down this route. As much fun as killing bosses and enemies are, variety is what prevents something feeling like a grind. That and a solid core gameplay loop, anyway. One of the features we got to see highlighted, even if briefly, was the challenge system they've been mentioning in terms of progression. Mike, for example, completed one called Detonation Trial, and Ben completed another called Combo Master. These challenges are specific to the activity you're doing, and are tailored around playstyles. Considering they are sources of loot and other resources, they likely give a reward linked to the activity that completes them. I'm hoping this means if you dream of being a melee interceptor, and nothing else, that these challenges will increase your loot progression down these lines, meaning you have a target to work towards, in addition of getting random loot from drops. There is also another system loosely linked to this which we got to see at the very end. During the missions you will unlock medals, for things such as getting combo kills, getting kills with certain weapons and abilities. These medals reward XP that are tallied up in the score screen, which leads us rather nicely into an all-new mechanic called the Alliance system. We have heard that name battered around a few times, but never seen it in action. What this does is encourage group play, so if you're a group up with other friends, you'll be able to share the rewards of medals you've completed, meaning everyone gains the same amount of XP. A nice little way to emphasise teamwork. I'm sure someone will figure out a way to cheese these medals at the endgame, but that's all part of the fun of these kind of mechanics, assuming they have at least some impact on progression, even once you are capped. I'm curious if these will extend into guilds or clans, perhaps getting even larger benefits for playing with someone from a group you belong to. Though we have exactly zero information when this comes to clans, this is just random speculative thoughts. That about covers off everything we've got to see in terms of the mission, without just rattling off what each of them killed. You can see all of that for yourself in the gameplay running in the background anyway. So next up I want to cover the javelins, what each of them were using, and the overall approach they were going for with their squad composition, as much as Mike would like to abandon the plan at every opportunity. The overall strategy they came up with was to have Ben in the Colossus up front with a tanking focus loadout, which included a shot coil for close range, heavy munitions fire to deal with flyers, and the taunt ability to protect others. Then we have John in the Storm, with an ice condition focused build, for both crowd control and to help the Interceptor trigger combos and activate their aura. Then we have the star of the show with Mike and his glow stick focused Interceptor. We can see that he's running with the Acid Bomb, Plasma Star, which are the shurikens, and finally the target beacon to improve single target damage. When combined with his components, which we didn't get to see, allow the Interceptor to be very effective at triggering combos and single target melee damage. For the last part of the stream we had the usual mini Q&A, this time related to Strongholds, the Interceptor, and a couple on loot. So let's run through these and see if we can draw out some new information, or at minimum, interesting information. Starting with a pretty simple question that Ben expands greatly on. What are their favourite combos? John's is using the legendary freeze abilities to control enemies and detonate them to keep spreading with more and more CC. Ben and Mike like how the difference in javelins allows several ways of creating squads with a focus, which Ben goes on to explain. This isn't exactly new information, but I'm pretty sure it tends to fly under the radar for most people. Who the person triggering a combo from a status effect determines how that combo reacts. So, if a Colossus triggers it, they cause it to explode in a large area, making them great at general AoE damage. The Storm creates a chain reaction, allowing them to keep the effect spreading to set up new combos. Rangers are the opposite to the Colossus, with an extremely focused but high damage explosion, ideal for single target. With the Interceptor we have possibly the most unique effect. Instead of dealing additional damage, they take on the aura of the status effect type. So with John's ice focused build, he would gain an ice aura, allowing him to carry the effect to new enemies, even ones not adjacent to the original targets. Next is related to the Legion of Dawn edition, and whether or not you're able to fully customize the armor set with the cosmetic options. So this is a bit of a half and half answer, but I know to some of you it's a rather important one. So yes, you can customize the color of the Legion of Dawn armor, and make it bright pink or any other color you want. However, currently the other features aren't available, so you can't change the textures, though they are working on it and hope to have it done by the game's launch or soon after. On to a bit of clarification when it comes to loot and progression, which technically was answered last week in vaguer terms. Will Strongholds have unique loot associated with them? The answer being no. All loot comes from a main loot table, though certain content and difficulties will narrow down the range of those items. So if you're completing a Stronghold on the higher difficulties, you will have a significantly higher chance of getting the best items. And in John's opinion, it's one of the best ways to grind for the top end loot in the endgame. Though I'm not sure how cut and dry this will be. If gaming shows us anything, it's that people will always take the path of least resistance when it comes to burning through loot and content. So once we get our hands on the game, we will quickly work out how true that statement is. If it ends up being a little bit off, I'm hoping they'll be open to altering some of the rewards on the more difficult content. That's assuming there are no other specific items tied to them for cosmetics. But this answer has given me some doubts that this could happen. A nice simple question next, but something that's pretty critical for any online game. Will there be any VoIP, or voice over IP if you're not familiar with that term? Yes, there will be, both open chat and squad chat. As the game is remaining purely PvE focused, hopefully we can avoid a lot of the toxicity that can be associated with in-game chats, though I'm sure the majority will still use Discord when playing with friends. Will there be dedicated servers? And will we be able to play across regions, such as the US and EU players being able to group together? The first part is something we've known since at least E3, likely longer, as it allows their live service and shared world mechanics to function. Apparently this also extends over to regions, which was unclear up until now, which is a nice change in the current climate. Games such as Destiny and Overwatch, due to the Activision Blizzard architecture, don't allow for this without someone having to change their region manually before entering the game. The Anthem version is much better for consumers, and clears up a lot of the concerns for people I know that play across the Atlantic. The next couple of questions we've already covered the answers for, so I'm going to skip over them. To a particularly important question related to Keystone and the endgame content in online multiplayer games, with raiding. They've been pretty secretive about them until now. In short, the answer is yes, just not initially. The long answer is that they always want there to be something for the players to aspire to. At launch, this will predominantly come in the form of learning the javelins, your playstyle, and their limits in addition to tackling the 3 Grandmaster difficulties in the pursuit of even greater rewards. They want to allow players a few weeks to settle into the game before setting new aspirations in the form of raiding, or their version of raiding, which is part of the features the live service will allow them to offer, which all sounds pretty good, but until we see how large the base game is, it's hard to judge if this is going to feel like an addition to the game, an advancement, or feel like it was removed from the game and released later. For now, that's something only time and playing the game will tell us. But as always, considering what we've seen so far, I'm going to continue being cautiously optimistic. Back to a question more themed to the stream with how does melee with the Interceptor actually work? In the build that was shown, Interceptors were a little bit overtuned, as at the time it had no cooldown on the melee combo, which has now been changed slightly as it was too spammable and powerful as a result. Now you can use it to complete a combo of attacks, which then triggers a short cooldown, similar to the other melee abilities for other javelins. This allows the Interceptor to effectively stunlock minor enemies indefinitely, though this doesn't work on the larger, tougher ones. Gear will allow you to constantly improve this as the game goes on, with specific melee-focused masterworks and legendaries being possible in the endgame. The last question is a bit closer to the marketing line, but I'll use it as an excuse to promote some other channels at the end of this video. So how can you learn more about Anthem in general? They provide the Anthem website, the streams they run, and their Twitter accounts. All great places to keep up to date with Anthem news and official resources. However, if you don't have time to sift through all of that, there are plenty of community-focused channels and discords you can watch and join which will do all the hard work for you, such as checking out other videos on my channel and streams from the like of Anthem Universe, Lupo to the Rescue, Anthem Codex, Anthem Insider, Tony Mo, Your Anthem, and if you're familiar with Overwatch, you can check out Ryan Central's personal channel. Obviously there are tons more, so I would go check out BSN for a much more extensive list. I also have a series called This Week in Anthem, where I round all the Anthem news each week and will soon be adding the community spotlight back in the new year. As always, if you think I've missed anything, or if you want to share your thoughts on the stream or this video, please let me know in the comment section below. I try my best to answer as many of these as I can, and love to hear people's random speculation about lore and other parts of the game. So thanks for watching. As always, if you like this video, you can leave a like, subscribe to support the channel, and use the bell to be notified of future content as it goes live. Until next time, I've been Dante, thanks for watching.